Hello, everyone. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us. We got a few peeps in the chat. Hello, hello. Hi, what's up, Allie? I'm joined here by Cherry. Cherry, say hi.
Hello, everyone.
We are so happy that you guys were able to join us on your Saturday afternoon. Hi, Luna. I am super stoked about this workshop. In case you guys don't know, Cherry is a certified I was gonna say RBG, but PvP badass. Um, and there, we were just talking about RBGs. That's that's why I was thinking RBGs. But she got her start in Legion, and she's done a ton of cool things aside from being so gracious to volunteer her time here with us for Visage. She also runs Oasis WoW, which is another incredible, inclusive community. And she's done pretty much everything under the sun when it comes to esports. So I will let Cherry take it away here. As you can see in her title, Community Manager, Esports Observer, Guide Writer, and more, like an actual baddie. Cherry, you just let me know when I need to move your slides, and let's jump right into it.
All right. I'm going to start off with the intro slide then, as people are trickling in. So Dean, sorry. Oh my God, I just saw Dean's name in the chat. God damn it. Okay, no, sorry. So as Adine was saying, I do a lot sometimes, and I'm tired, but it's okay because it's for the good of the community. That's the sacrifice I'm willing to make. No, but for those that don't know me, like a little more in depth, I am 25 years old. I go by she, her, hers. I actually did my undergrad at UCSD and graduated with a bachelor's in physiology and neuroscience and a minor in psychology. Um, right now, I actually work in an emergency room as a medical scribe, so you can imagine how crazy that is. I'm gonna work Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve this year in the emergency room, so it's gonna be bad because the people that go to the emergency room on holidays are in critical condition because why else would you be going? So we'll see how that works out. But my goal is to become a physician assistant, so I'm excited for that. I'm actually going to be applying this coming year, so we will see how that goes. Um, Also, like how Adine was saying, I run a community called Oasis, and I have been running it for about 7 years. I started it in 2017 when I was in college, and it actually started as an RBG community. We did that for about a year to a year and a half, I think. And then RBG activity as a whole started to go down around Battle for Azeroth time. So we actually expanded to doing PvE events, and now we're doing Mythic Plus events, raid events. We haven't done as many PvP events, but we're hoping to bring it back now that they're introducing cross-faction random BGs now, I believe. So I will try to implement those. And then we also do like a lot of charity initiatives. A big one we raise money for is usually Gamers Outreach. I think over the past 2 to 3 years, we've raised over $12,000 now, which is pretty cool. Um, Other than that, I do work on the WoW esports team as an observer. So when you guys are watching AWC, MDI, TGP, and you're looking at the camera that's like hopping between the players, I'm one of those that controls that. So it's kind of fun. So uh, if you ever want like me to try to get cool shots, yell at me to do it. Like a example is if you guys watch AWC, and sometimes you see like that bird shot on what's the map on Ashamains, or you see the popcorn shot on Blackrock Hold. That's me. I will take credit for that. But our other observer does it too, so it's not just me. But those are the two ones I like to do. Um, I stream my gameplay occasionally, and on outside of WoW, I also do play Final Fantasy, Valheim, and Shrouded. And I'm actually planning on trying Path of Exile. I see everyone talking about it, and it looks cool, so I'm probably gonna try that out. So we will see. And I think we can go to the next slide. So what I'm going to be talking about during this little workshop is I'm going to be specifically talking about BG Blitz. That is my main form of PvP content this season. So, what is BG Blitz? It's basically a fast-paced 8v8 rated battleground scenario that you can solo queue or duo queue, and it was introduced this expansion. So, when you duo queue, you can only do healer DPS, or tank DPS, I believe. I believe those are the only options. I don't know why Blizzard doesn't allow double DPS to queue, because I feel like double healer queue is a lot more control over the game. I'm not sure, but yeah, they won't let you double DPS queue, unfortunately. So if you're afraid to solo queue, maybe grab a friend, do this content together. But there are 9 maps. It's basically all of the normal random BG maps except Seething Shore. My guess is because Seething Shore is still broken, and they probably don't know how to fix it for a BG Blitz setting, which I think they should, honestly. I honestly think they should look into the map, but they haven't, so we'll see. But right now, we're just stuck with Arathi Basin, Battle for Gilneas, Deep Hole Ravine, Deepwind Gorge, Eye of the Storm, Silver Shard Mines, Temple of Katmogu, Twin Peaks, and Warsong Gulch. The great thing about BG Blitz is that the overall leaderboards are actually spec specific. So if you play like a mage, for example, let's say you're a Frost Mage main and you get to 2k and you're like, I want to try Arcane. If you switch to Arcane, your CR will go all the way back down to 0, and your Arcane rating will be independent from your Frost rating. So if you want to play the same character and you don't have a lot of alts, you actually have the freedom to swap between your specs. So that means also if you're a class that can DPS and heal, if you are a healer main and you want to try DPSing on that character, you can also switch. So that's what I like about BG Blitz personally. We can go to the next one. So my experience in BG Blitz so far, for me personally, I played a lot during the first 2 to 3 months. So my initial goal going into the season was to get 2400 CR across all of my healers. I've only done it on my R-Shaman, H-Pally, and H-Priest so far. But as you can see, my Disc, Preservation Evoker, Ardred, and Mistweaver are all up there as well. I just haven't finished it off because I'm going to be honest, I got a little bored with WoW. And then I learned that the season is probably going all the way until March, so I stopped playing for like a month and a half already. I haven't really touched BG Blitz, but those are like my standings so far. My goal is basically to get 1800 on everything at least. So all my PvP elite sets I plan to get through BG Blitz. So my DH is already done, for example. My Hunter is almost there and stuff like that. So I'm going to be queuing a lot of this mode because even though it might be bad, I'm still obsessed with it. It's like a little love-hate relationship. Another thing I've noticed out of all the games I've done is that there are certain classes that seem to have more control over the map. So if you play like a rogue or a druid, for example, you definitely can have a lot more influence on the outcome of a map because of your utility. So an example I can give is like on Arathi Basin, for example, because it's 8v8, there's only 16 people on the map, and there's 5 bases. So if a team isn't rotating properly and you're like a rogue or you're a druid, because of your cyclone, because of like your sap, your blind, you can go to a base by yourself and almost have a guaranteed 1v1 and take the flag, because with your CC you don't have to kill the person. So your CC is very strong to the point where you can just, if they don't have a trinket, you can just show up, do your CC, take the base, defend it for a couple seconds, and then you can just leave. So it's classes like that that tend to have a little more influence, whereas a very clear example of a class that can't really do anything would be, I would say, a warrior. Like a warrior is really good in teamfight. If you've done RBGs or arenas before, you're very aware that they have like that single target damage, they have the mortal strike and stuff like that. Unfortunately, when it comes to a battleground setting where it's very fast paced and it requires a lot of rotating, the warrior compared to the rogue on what you can provide for your team varies drastically. So I noticed that's one thing that people find frustrating is depending on the class you play, you might have an easier or harder time in Blitz. And stemming off of that, if any of your friends Blitz, the biggest complaint you will hear is the MMR, both positive and negative, and I'm going to get into it on the next slide a little bit more. But whether they like MMR for a good reason or a bad reason, it's a big problem in Blitz. And there's like a lot of conspiracy theories on like why it works the way it does. And the unfortunate part is that the 1500 to 1800 MMR bracket, which is the bracket where everyone starts, because just in case for people that don't know, when you do PvP content and it's the first time you've ever done it, the game by default puts everyone at 1500 MMR. You don't start at 0, you start at 1500. That's where everyone starts. That's why when you win a RBG, you get like 192 points on the first win, or when you win an arena match, you get 96 points, and then the higher and higher you go, it starts to level out. But yeah, the unfortunate thing out of all those alts I played, and because I played the MMR brackets multiple times, is that that beginner bracket is very, very bad. I think we can go to the next one now. So the next one is going to talk about pros and cons of BG Blitz. This is all in my opinion. I know people probably feel different about this stuff because obviously everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but this is going to be my opinion that I share with you guys about how I think of what's positive and what's negative about this BG mode. So positives, so MMR. You see it's listed in pros and cons, so I'll start with the pros of MMR. The pros of MMR for BG Blitz is that it's very volatile. So I know, like, especially if you're on like Twitter and stuff like that, you see a lot of people like nagging on others for like getting their first time 2400s or whatever through BG Blitz and they have no arena XP. It is a little like lopsided with how fast you go on an MMR increase in Blitz, because the example I can give is that I have one hunter that I started doing BG Blitz on. My hunter is 20-0, which means I haven't lost a single game. That hunter is at 3k MMR. If I went 20-0 in like 2v2 or 3v3, I'd probably only be at like 2k MMR, 2200 MMR. But that hunter that I am 20-0 on is at 3k MMR in BG Blitz. Later, I'm going to talk about why that's a con, but that's an example of how volatile the MMR is. Why, like, yes, I got lucky with going on a 20-0 win streak, but why does the game decide to jump my MMR that hard? Because in any other PvP mode in World of Warcraft, it does not jump that high that fast. So even though it's a good thing in terms of maybe grinding your rewards faster, there's going to be like some negative consequences that come with it. And I'll get into that. But another pro is that it's just another avenue for people to earn their PvP rewards and their ranks, especially if you are on a tight schedule or you don't have a team to play with, because like I mentioned earlier, BG Blitz is solo queue or duo queue, and you can just queue it whenever you want. I will say the queue times in the mornings are probably like a little slower, but towards the night they start to pick up. But that is a pro that I think, and I think that's a huge one, because RBGs, you had to coordinate 10 people, and you have to hope there's another group of 10 people in that are also formed. With this, you just queue up, everyone else is queuing up, and then it'll put you guys into a game as long as everyone's MMR is around the same range. So, another pro is that you have the freedom to play whatever you want. Obviously, with the caveat that you might have a harder time on certain classes, but when you used to RBG, right? If you did, they'd be like, "Oh, we need to make sure we have these three healers." Which is usually like a Mistweaver, Disc Praise, and something else. And then they're like, "Oh, we need to make sure we have a Guardian Druid FC. Oh, we need to make sure we have a Rogue. Oh, we already have one Hunter. We're not stacking Hunters." Like stuff like that is stuff you would normally hear in RBGs. With this, you can queue on whatever you want, and the game will sort you as best as it can. Because there was a change that Blizzard implemented that tries to balance the classes. I'll try to find the picture and post it in the Discord, but they had to do a class stacking change because there were games that were happening that had like 7 rogues in the game, and one team would have like 4 rogues and the other team would have 3 rogues. And then an example I had, like I said, I just have to find the picture. I got into a match where it was, I think it was 1 H Pally, 1 priest, 1 druid, and the other 5 were all hunters. And the other team, I think, only had like 2 hunters. It was a very, very weirdly balanced map, but that's an example of why they had to implement the change. It was pretty bad. But yeah, you can queue on whatever you want, and the game will try to sort you as best as it can. And like I mentioned earlier, you can queue on whatever spec you want. So like if you're on a hunter, since I was just talking about hunters, if you're a beast mastery main and you get to 1800 and you're like, oh, okay, but I want to try something else, you can freely swap to like marksman or survival. It'll reset your CR back to 0, and your CRs will be independent of each other. So I don't know, let's say you get your marksman to 1600. If you spec back to beast mastery, your 1800 for that spec will still be there. So it's really nice. You can just flip as you wish, and you can always come back to it. Another pro that I think a lot of people don't know is that you actually can get access to the PvP vanilla sets. I believe it's the Field Marshal and the Warlord sets. So that includes the banana set for like warriors on Alliance, for example. Everyone calls it the banana set because it's very yellow. But you can actually earn those appearances through BG Blitz once you hit 1800. The 1800 is class specific though, so if you want like the warrior set, you do have to hit 1800 on a warrior. If you want the priest set, you do have to hit 1800 on a priest. So the good thing is you can at least double dip on stuff. So if you hit 1800 on that character, not only do you get access to those vanilla PvP sets, you also unlock the PvP elite set for the season. So you can double dip on your achievements there if you haven't grinded these sets before, because the only other way you were able to get these sets is if you hit 1800 in RBGs. You cannot get 1800 in arenas to go buy these sets. It specifically has to be RBGs and now BG Blitz. I don't know if they've changed this, but I know there's, if you did the Mage Tower in Legion, to unlock additional hidden appearances, there was one that required 10 RBG wins. I think they're trying to change it to where it can be 10 BG Blitz wins. I'm not 100% sure, but if they haven't said that, I hope they do change it, because I did RBGs the other day at prime time and they were pretty dead. I think BG Blitz has pretty much taken over that bracket, so hopefully they add that change. In terms of cons, MMR. We're gonna circle back to MMR. So like I said, the example I gave, my hunter is 20 and 0 and at 3k MMR. So the con is that, yes, you personally are going to feel very excited to be that high of an MMR. But the unfortunate part is that, like, to put it bluntly, like, some players do not deserve to be in the bracket. Like, to put it bluntly. And what I mean by that is because I'm going to use myself as the personal example. I am not a 3k hunter at all, even though the game thinks I'm a 3k hunter. Ever since my hunter went 20 and 0, I have not logged on that hunter and queued it. Because I know if I queue that hunter into a 3k game, I'm just going to be a detriment to my team. It's going to instantly be a 7v8. My hunter has no gear. I don't know how to play my hunter at that high of a level, because 3k is pretty high. That's all the people farming Blitz, especially the people pushing. And I just don't feel comfortable doing it, right? I should not be in that bracket, but because the MMR in the bracket is so volatile, the game thinks I belong there. So it's a good and bad thing. Like, yes, I have such high MMR that my CR is going to be very safe. If I lose that game, I'm not going to lose any rating. I'm very safe. But at the same time, I'm putting my own team at a disadvantage because the game is skyrocketing my placement and I should not be there. So I've already told myself, for example, that my hunter is not queuing again until I queue with the healer to actually lower my MMR on purpose. And this was like 2 months ago. So I have not touched my hunter for 2 months. And I only need like 50 more rating on it to get my 1800 set. That's all I need. But I haven't touched it. And another example is that when you're queuing BG Blitz, I believe the game rewards you harder than it punishes you. Because if you go on a loss streak, I believe you have to lose like maybe 3 to 5 to really lose all of your MMR, but to gain the MMR, I think if you win just 2 or 3, it will skyrocket up. So I think it's actually more favored towards win streaks than loss streaks, which is a good thing. But then again, you'll have, unfortunately, a mix of players playing at an MMR they probably shouldn't be playing at because the Blitz MMR is so volatile. And that's why if you play BG Blitz or you have friends that play it, there's a conspiracy theory going around that the reason that BG Blitz MMR is so inflated compared to like solo shuffle, 2v2, 3v3 and stuff like that, people are speculating it's because Blizzard wanted to force us to play a new mode. Mind you, I have no idea how true it is. I just think it's a really funny theory because I could honestly see that, but obviously nobody knows for sure. But that is like the number one conspiracy theory that people have, is that they were trying to encourage people to play the new bracket, and that's why the MMR in that bracket's insane. The other con about BG Blitz, because of that MMR, it means you're going to hit your goals faster. So the drop-off in BG Blitz, I believe, is pretty huge. Like if you look at a PvP graph or something, the drop-offs after 1800, 21, 2400 are pretty high. Like people just get their rating and stop because that's all they wanted. So a lot of people did it through BG Blitz, and now you just have like this weird middle range of the bracket that's missing a lot of players because people stop as soon as they get their rewards. Mind you, that's a problem with the game in general, even PvE, but it was just super noticeable in Blitz this season. Another con is class balancing. So like I said, even though they did try to implement a class stacking change, there is still going to be class balancing issues and queue times. So, for example, even if both teams have a rogue, the rogues can be different specs. So if you have a sub-rogue versus an outlaw rogue, in theory, the sub-rogue is technically better because they have better utility and CC. And it also depends if your rogue knows how to play objectively as a rogue, right? So even though there's one rogue on each team, if your rogue unfortunately doesn't know where to be and when to be there, and the other rogue does, that gives the other team an instant advantage as well. So that's kind of an example of like, yes, class stacking is fixed, but it's still very dependent on like who the player is behind the screen. And that's where the RNG of the games comes into play. One of my friends actually gave me this number. I don't think I remember the cutoffs exactly, but they were saying when you play BG Blitz, you have to think of like 3 different percentages. So I think it's like 40% of the games are going to be like out of your control. 40% of the games you're going to be able to contribute, pull your part, and the outcome is going to be like similar, not heavily in someone's favor. And then the 20% is you are straight up getting carried by your team. I think that's the percentages they gave me. So that's something to think about if you are going, if you're like winning, losing, going up and down a lot. You have to realize that with how RNG these games and matchmaking is that some of the time the teams are going to be balanced. Some of the times the other team is just going to have better players, and then some of the time you're going to be the worst player on your team, and your team is absolutely carrying you. So you just have to keep that in mind when you're playing. Um, and then the last problem, which I honestly think is the biggest overall problem, is that BG Blitz has different map mechanics than normal BGs and rated BGs. So what this means is even if you've practiced random battlegrounds and if you're an avid random battleground queuer, like, you know how to capture flags, you know how to capture nodes, you know how carts work on Silver Shard mines. None of that's going to matter in BG Blitz because they changed a lot of the point values, they changed the timers, and stuff like that. So the only maps I would say are similar are Deepwind Gorge and... No. The only maps that are similar are Temple of Kotmogu and Silver Shard Mines. Everything is very different otherwise. So I would say that's a major con because if you are confident in the normal version and you try to queue this different version, you're not necessarily going to understand it, and there's no in-game like indication of how you should play the map. You actually have to look it up in advance. And an example I can give is Eye of the Storm is a very, very good example of, I feel like, I don't know what they did with the map design, but Eye of the Storm is a map where, unfortunately, if you have even just one player on your team that doesn't know how the map works, and if they do something incorrectly, they can actually throw the entire game. I don't think a map like that should ever exist in the game where one person does one thing that they think is good for their team, but it can like actually just make their team lose. I don't think that should be a map in the game, but here we are. So I would say that's a major con for sure. And then we can go to the next one. So some changes during season 1 is Deep Hall Ravine is a new map in general. So that map is in the BG Blitz map pool. Like I mentioned earlier, the class stacking is pretty big. So they try to even it out. So like if one team has one rogue, the other team will have one rogue. If the team has a demon hunter, they'll try to put a demon hunter on the other team. Obviously, it's not going to be a perfect one-to-one, but the game does try to balance it because it won't be perfect, especially with duo queuing and just obviously the amount of people playing. But they did it to try to stop one-sided teams. So like on a node map where you actually have to go capture bases, they wanted to stop it from one team having like 2 rogues and the other team having 0. Because like I mentioned earlier, rogues are pretty strong in objective control. So if one team has 2 of them and the other team has 0, like psychologically the other team's going to feel like they're at a disadvantage, which they mechanically are. But that doesn't mean like you can still beat the other team. But that's still a big psychological factor, right? That's a big part of any competitive mode, is that if you feel like you're already at a disadvantage, you're going to be discouraged going into the game. So they tried to fix that, but the unfortunate part is that the queue times are very long now, and that's a very big complaint for a lot of people. So when BG Blitz first came out, everyone's queue times, even if you were a DPS, was like 4 to 6 minutes. Nowadays, when you queue, it's anywhere from like 8 to 15 minutes sometimes. I've even, like, as a healer, as a solo queue healer, I've actually sat like a 25-minute queue at prime time, which is crazy to me. Mind you, that was probably when people were starting to play less and less, but that's still crazy to think about. As a healer, you're sitting at a 25-minute queue. Like that doesn't make sense to me, but that was a big complaint. Like, yes, you fixed the class stacking, but now you murdered our queue times, and it makes people not want to queue. who wants to sit a 12-minute queue for a 5-minute game? That does not feel good. You're sitting out of the game longer than actually playing it. So, uh-oh, what happened? Oh, Nadine. Oh my god, we're being haunted. All right. But yeah, so that's an unfortunate byproduct is the increased queue times. Some general PvP changes that were introduced is that they actually lowered the rating requirements for some of the rewards. So the PvP weapon illusion used to be earned at 2100, but now you can get it at 1950. The PvP elite weapon appearances, that are specific appearances to the season, were reduced from 2400 to 2100. And then they also introduced a new PvP specific crafting material called a heraldry. It basically allows you to make or craft PvP items and put whatever stats you want on them. And you can only buy them via honor, bloody tokens, and conquest. So that's a pretty nice change they made for gearing. Even though it feels bad we don't have a vault anymore, we at least have that we can pretty freely buy. So that's at least a good thing. We can go to the next slide to talk about gearing. So for people that are interested in doing PvP and you have no idea how to gear, there's a couple different ways you can do it. So first of all, the bloody tokens are probably one of the most important and easiest things that you can farm for to PvP gear. So that gear is 636 item level in PvP, which means it's 3 levels below Conquest gear, which is the top PvP gear. So, and it's actually the easiest to farm. So, the thing you do is you just turn on war mode and you do all of your world quests in war mode. So if you're someone that always does your world quests, whether for reputation, and whatever else it gives you, transmog or whatever, each world quest you do just for doing it in war mode will give you 100 bloody tokens. And the gear that you can buy costs either 700, I believe 850. There's some 525 items, but like that gives you an example, right? Like to buy one of the 525 items, you just have to do 6 world quests. On top of that, there's actually a weekly Spark quest. That Spark quest will be in one of the 4 zones, and when you complete it, that alone gives you 1,000 bloody tokens as well. So typically all you do is you pick up that quest, you go to the zone. Usually in that zone, there is a free-for-all PvP quest. You look for a group in custom PvP, you join a 5-stack, and you kind of just spam kill people. Until you finish your quest. Occasionally there will be a bounty that pops up in that zone. Make sure you kill the bounty because they drop like a satchel that also gives you bloody tokens, conquest, and honor when you loot it. And then the other thing when you're in war mode is like every 15 to 20 minutes there is a crate that spawns. So there's like an airplane that flies in and then it'll randomly drop off the crate at some location. And then you just loot it and take it. That also gives you like bloody tokens and 60 conquests per box, and you can loot multiple boxes in a day. If you're Alliance, you're pretty much guaranteed to get it. If you're Horde, you unfortunately need to try to find a group on like Tyke or Illidan, I think, because unfortunately a majority of the PvP player base is Alliance. So if you are Horde, you're going to have a difficult time farming the war crates and the bounties, but it is possible. Just if you can't do that, you at least want to do all your world quests in war mode, and that'll get you a lot of the tokens. Aside from that, the only other option you have is to farm honor gear, which is 626 PvP item level. Depending on your PvE item level, you could probably get away with using your PvE gear until you get Conquest gear, especially if you have 4-piece, because the 4-piece stats are completely the same in PvE and PvP, so there's no point in, like, if you have a PvE tier piece that's higher than 626, don't bother buying an honor piece to replace it. Your tier piece will still be better. Um, and if your PvE item level is 626 or higher already, I would just focus on buying the trinkets because there is a stam bonus applied to having both PvP trinkets, which you definitely want. And you obviously want a medallion to get out of CC. So I would buy trinkets first, and then I would buy your jewelry afterwards just to make sure you have the verse, so you're not just dying really fast. If you have absolutely zero PvP gear and PvE gear, your best bet is probably buying I think it's 606 item level gear off of the auction house. It's PvP gear. You can buy it off the auction house. It's like really cheap. And then you probably would be better off farming normal and epic battlegrounds in between your bloody token farms to gear. Which one you farm is going to be very dependent on each player. I personally do not like epic BGs. I would rather do normal BGs. But I know some people like epics because it's 40v40 and you're less likely to die as often because it's just that many people. So some people tend to queue epics just to feel a little safer. But then once you start grinding gear and you buy your conquest gear, just make sure you're doing the weekly quests. There's the weekly spark quest, like I mentioned. There's usually 2 PvP quests and then the weekly brawl. For the brawl quest, you just have to queue directly into the match. I don't think there's somewhere you can pick it up, but you have to queue directly into it. Solo shuffle, 2v2 and 3v3 are probably the fastest ways to grind conquest. BG Blitz and rated BGs barely give any conquest for how long you're in there for a win. So you're better off doing the arena versions. And that will just, again, determine on what resources you have. If you have a reliant 2v2 partner and you guys think you can win, just farm 2v2 for your conquest. If there's 3 of you and you're confident you can win, do the 3v3. If you have neither of those options, then just solo queue. I believe that is all I had. I kind of just threw a lot of information at you guys, but I know that Dean said it's going to be uploaded onto YouTube, so I just wanted to make sure I got it all out there so that you can go back and reference it. But I guess we can do questions now.
Yes, question time. So feel free to put any questions you guys have in the chat. I know I have one. So you were talking about the new BG map, Deep Wind, deep something? It's not Gorge.
Deep Hall Ravine.
Okay, I mean, yeah, okay, the ravine. So, do you think it's been a good addition to the game? Do you think that, the previous maps kind of encompass all the good objectives? Like, what is your tea on this new map? Should we encounter it in the wild?
So this map, especially in lower MMR games, I think you can be the sole player that determines if you win or lose. So the way the map works is that there's 2 carts that spawn on the opposite side of the map, and they follow railroad tracks towards the middle. And there's a point where they cross sides. So your team's cart is gonna cross onto the enemy team side. So it tends to switch control at that point. So what I found is that on my hunter, for example, I think I did it twice. There's these carts you can take to zoom across the map. So what everyone does is they tunnel the middle because there's also a crystal in the middle that you kind of have to prevent anyone from capturing because it'll provide them a lot of points and a mini bloodlust. So everyone tends to fight on top of that crystal to make sure the other team doesn't get it for free, which means people aren't watching the carts all the way at the start of their base. So what I did on my hunter is I would fly across the map instantly, go turn the other cart, and just defend it. So we would have two cards in our control, and we were getting 9 points like every 2 seconds, whereas the other team was just tunneled in mid team fighting, and they weren't getting any points. So
I
that
see.
map is because it's new for everybody. I think everyone has to get used to how it works, but I see it played incorrectly a lot. It's going to be a learning process for everybody because it's like that map comes down to how many people per team is paying attention to the objectives. So
Gotcha. And not getting caught up fighting in mid.
exactly that is a big problem in RBGs and BG Blitz in general is that people just tunnel team fight and they don't look at anything else happening on the map, which is something that players have to build awareness for, and that obviously takes practice and time. Like I can yap all day about how you should play the map, but at the end of the day, it comes down to how much that player is paying attention to their map on their own.
Gotcha. We do have a question from Kitty Cat in the chat. God, let's say that 3 times fast. Is there a website like Warcraft Logs that shows us how well talents are doing in PvP settings, like Arena versus BGs? If not, how do we find out what's meta for the class? Are there any resources that you can recommend, Cherry, that can be used?
Yeah, so kind of like how Adid said, this is one I use too. Murloc IO is a big one. I'll link it in chat. I don't know if it'll go through. I
It,
don't know
it,
if it went through.
it will not, but I will link it.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so Adine will relink it, but that is the website that I use and I tell a lot of other people to use. Basically, you can go in there and it takes the information from the top 20 players, and there is a separate section for Blitz versus arenas. So it'll show you the top 50 players and it'll show you how many of them are taking the talents. Um, it'll tell you, like, it'll clearly highlight, like, okay, 48 people are taking this talent. That's probably a talent you should take. Um, it'll tell you, like, the embellishments they run. It'll tell you the enchants they use. It'll pretty much go through, like, their entire stat thing. Yeah, it's I've actually started using it for PvE too, especially for Mythic Plus. Um, when it comes to raiding, definitely stick to Warcraft logs because that's very like people change their talents so much in raid. Um, when it comes to like Mythic Plus, BJ Blitz, and arenas, I actually use that website. It's very helpful because it shows you what the top 50 people are playing and you can compare it. Um, the other resource would be to find the top players of your class and watch their stream or look for YouTube videos. So you could literally go onto so for example, I'm a healer main, so I constantly look up healers. So I will go to YouTube, I will literally type Resto Shaman PvP guide, and I will see like Sidu and Lontar. And those are two people I trust to guide right. I will always, always, always look at their guide. And they pretty much play every healer as well. So you can look them up. And if anyone in chat has like a specific class you want to learn about, I probably have an idea of a streamer or a content creator for every single class, I think. So I can try to point you in the right direction. So like, for example, everyone knows Peekaboo, right? So a lot of people watch Peekaboo for Rogue. For Warrior, I know a lot of people watch like Bajira, but I don't think Bajira pushes rank 1 that much anymore, so a lot more people are watching like DJ Rio, Mud, people like that. But yeah, you definitely want to look up the top players of the your class. The other I'm trying to think of what other resources. For BG Blitz, I know Adine has the link to my BG Blitz guide I gave her. She just did. She posted it already. That guide I wrote is a written guide, and that's specifically for BG Blitz. I do break down like every single map, the runes, and stuff like that. So if you have no idea how to play the maps and you have no idea what to expect, I definitely would use that guide. I also put PvP lingo in there, so if there are words you have no idea what's being said or like what they mean, it's probably in there as well because I've added new words because people are like when I'm streaming, people are like, Cherry, like what the hell does that mean when you say like you're spinning a base? I'm like, oh right, that's so normal to me, but it's not normal to other people. So I try to put a lot of PvP lingo in there as well. Um, and
And
then I see your follow-up question about which players are the top. So there's this website as well. I love how these are all player-made websites, by the way. There's another website called Drustvar PvP. I'll just link it here so Adine can relink it. Or it's just Drustvar, sorry. But there's a website called Drustvar. That is a very statistical based PvP website as well. So you can go into that website and you can look to see the top players of each bracket and of each spec. So like if you want to go to leaderboards and you go to like rated Battleground Blitz, for example, you can put the region to US. You can click on, I don't know, I care about priests, and then you can click the holy icon. It'll show you, it'll list you all the people that are playing that spec and their like placements and their rating. Some of them have their Twitch linked to it, some of them don't, but because you have their name, you can probably get an idea of like if they have a YouTube, if they have a Twitch, like you can try typing in their name. So you can probably find them that way as well. But those would be the resources I use for sure.
awesome. Ooh, thank you. We have a question from Damage Incorporated saying, I've got pretty comfortable PvPing around 1600 to 1800, but I only know 3 friends who PvP. Should I be scared of looking for people in LFG? I enjoy healing a bit in twos. Would it be easy to find someone who would want a healer in twos?
So, uh, ba- 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 so everyone's gonna have queue anxiety at the end of the day. I still have queue anxiety. Like, I actually really hate LFG, but at the end of the day, you do need to network to find people to play with. So the great thing is, if you're a healer main, everyone wants to be your friend, especially in PvP. So you have that going for you at least. A lot of people don't heal, and a lot of people that do heal sometimes don't heal well. So if you are a healer and you can prove to people that you have like the potential to play at like whatever rating you're just planning for, like if you are a solid 1800 2K player, that'll make people happy because a majority of the player base even struggles to get 1600, right? So you as a healer will actually have a lot of options to find people in LFG to queue. So I would do that. But you are going to have anxiety. Like that's just something unfortunately we are going to have to deal with. So what I tell myself when I have it, it's because I saw someone say this to someone else. If you are afraid to queue, you have 2 options. You either queue or you don't queue, right? And if you're trying to push rating, what are you just not going to queue? Or like, right? Like you can think about it that way. Are you just not going to queue? Because those are your only 2 options. You either have to get through it and just build some mini confidence for a couple minutes, maybe an hour or 2, versus you're just not going to play. Those are literally your only 2 options. So you can go into it understanding that there are probably hundreds of other players that feel the same way, but somebody has to take the initiative. My 3v3 team was started just because I asked people, do you want to play? And we were originally RBGers, and I'm like, you guys want a 3v3? Sure. And then we ended up doing that, right? But it sometimes just takes initiative for one person to do it. But again, you as a healer, you already have that inherent advantage because you're a healer. Everyone wants a healer on their B tag because they're so scarce. So if you want to find someone in twos in LFG, definitely just sit in there a few minutes a day, put in your note like your goals saying like you want to push 1800, you're looking for someone to do 2K, do you prefer to use Discord? Put that in like the description part of your group and just see who signs up. And then you're gonna maybe lose some, you're gonna win some, you're gonna go through a lot of pugs before you find someone that's like, hey, like this is gonna be a long time person I queue with. It's kind of like a trial and error, and yeah, that that's the only way you're gonna find someone though. You have to just consistently play. You have to outreach, and you can't be afraid. So
It is daunting, though, I will say, as someone
it
who
is,
has
it is,
been
it is very daunting. Like I'm a healer main, and I know I'm like a big commodity, but even then, I'm just like I'm scared. These DPS yell at us for no reason sometimes.
Yeah, take accountability, DPS. Do we have
So yeah.
any other questions in the chat, or if not, we can wrap up and do some last minute thoughts.
Darn DPS.
Agreed. Agreed.
The will you not just queue is a good example. Yeah, that's why I started to tell other people now. I've even told people that in my chat. They're like, Cherry, should I queue? And I'm like, what, are you just not gonna queue? Like, what, I tell you no and you're gonna log off? Alright, see you next time. Like, bye. That's why I started doing that now too. It's really funny.
Yeah, that's amazing, honestly. It's like that's the motivational talk I needed today. Just cue forehead. I'm queuing.
Yeah, literally just queue.
All right. Well, we are
And this
good.
is coming from someone with queue anxiety. I have queue anxiety, so I completely understand. But at the end of the day, again, what, you're just gonna log off the game? Like, no, you're gonna queue and you're gonna learn, and you might lose some rating, but it's okay.
Exactly. Well, you've heard Cherry here first today. Just Q. Thank you, Cherry, for giving us this lowdown on PvP. Guys, remember, if you have any questions or anything like that, please feel free to either reach out to us in Visage or Cherry. Hopefully, I'm not putting you on the spot, Cherry.
Oh, I have a lot of ults. I'm down to queue. I actually have double dipped healers, so I have healers that I don't care about the CR on. So I don't care.
She's so
I just want to
awesome.
play.
Exactly. Well, I'll let you wrap up, Sherry, with any last standing thoughts. And then we will definitely upload this to YouTube so people can check back on it later.
Sure. We can just go to the last slide for socials. So, if anyone has like a Blue Sky, Twitter, Twitch, what else did I put on there? YouTube, those are all of my socials. I tried to keep them as consistent as possible. I do run again the Oasis Discord, so we do like Mythic Plus and raid events and stuff like that. Um, and I am around in Visage. Like I used to be a community member or committee member, but I stepped down because I'm just so busy. But I am like lurking all the time. So if you guys want to ping me in that Discord, or you want to like queue PvP, definitely hit me up. I'm down to help people learn Blitz. So I can be like your duo queue healer, or I can DPS. I have DPS I can play too. And I don't mind helping out because I do have a lot of characters I don't care about my rating on. So I am definitely down to help out if that's something that interests people. Um, Honestly, I haven't been enjoying WoW that much lately, but when it comes to helping people, that's fun to me, so I will definitely log on. If that's something that people want, I will log on for that. But
Awesome.
yeah, those are my socials, and that's really it. I
Thank you.
appreciate everybody coming and listening, especially if this is listened to on YouTube as well.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we'll close this out here, guys. Thank you again for coming in and give us any feedback and suggestions that you have in the community or wherever. All right, guys, have a great rest of your weekend. Bye bye.